everybody, I'm Jammer here today with my video review for Pokemon Sun and Moon for the Nintendo 3DS. For my background in this series, I grew up with Pokemon. We'd trade cards at school, run around the playground catching invisible Pokemon, and of course watch the anime. But ironically, I had never had any of the games as a kid. My first experience with Pokemon was at a dentist waiting room where I played Pokemon Blue. I've always been a fan of the series and its characters, but the only games I ever owned myself were spin-offs. The first one I got was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Blue Rescue Team for the original DS. I fell in love with that game and I've played nearly every one since. But as far as mainline Pokemon, my experience is a bit lacking. When I was older, I went back and tried to play some of them, only ended up beating was Emerald. I tried both Heart Gold, Fire Red, but for some reason I just never finished them. I don't know what held me back, but I was never drawn into the experience like I was the Mystery Dungeon games. Now this brings us to Sun and Moon. Considering my background, I'd never followed up the hype going into a brand new generation, let alone a new game for this series. So this experience as a whole was all new to me. It was the excitement and constant trailers nearly every week leading up to its launch that had pulled me in. When they first announced these games, I didn't really expect that I would want to pick them up in the end, but I have to give a huge credit to the Pokemon Company's advertising team because they nailed the marketing and got me on board. Now with that all out of the way, let's get to the meat of the game. You start off by moving to the new region of Alola, a lush Hawaiian-inspired region full of life, lush jungles, and beautiful beaches. As usual, you're thrown right in to get your starter and beginning your adventure. The difference here, unlike in past games, you won't be able to take on the League, but instead you go through what they call the Island Challenge. It's a rite of passage for young children to travel the region and grow alongside their Pokemon. Instead of taking on the gyms and their leaders, you face these trials, with each one being unique and different from the rest, whether it's finding hidden Pokemon, searching for recipe ingredients, or telling the difference between dance routines. All of them end with a totem battle, which is a fight against a massively uncatchable Pokemon with powered up stats and the ability to call in help from other wild Pokemon. Random wild encounters can later get this SOS ability, and it can be a bit ridiculous at times when you're trying to catch that Pokemon, especially considering you can only throw a Pokeball when there's only one Pokemon in battle. But I felt that their call for help would fail often enough that it made it bearable. The change to the gym area I found to be very refreshing, and it kept me involved to see what lay ahead for each trial to come. The puzzles during the trials were fun to solve, and I felt that were actually more unique than some of the gyms in previous games. Since the leaders have been replaced with a single totem Pokemon, you can get your fill from battles like that by challenging the Kahunas. After you complete all the trials on one specific island, you must battle that island's Kahuna before moving on to the next. They all use specific typing bias, just like the gym leaders did, and their fights pose a great difficulty. That's one thing I can definitely say about the game. There are many moments where I would barely escape the battle or trial with hardly any health left on my Pokemon. Of course, some felt easier than others, but there were a few specific fights where I got my butt kicked a few times. That being said, I never felt the unnecessary need to grind, so I felt the game is paced rather well in that regard. The big addition to this game is the introduction of Z moves. Throughout the game, you will collect Z crystals, one of each type, which can be held by your Pokemon and used one time in battle as a super powered up move to dish out onto your opponents. There are also specific crystals exclusive to certain Pokemon that can be used to power up their signature move. I thought that the Z moves were balanced rather well, and it didn't really feel like an automatic win button. It was fun to be strategic and lengthier battles by trying to plan out when I would want to use my Z move. It also proved to be pretty useful when trying to train your low level Pokemon. With the help of the Z move, I felt more confident that my Pokemon could take on who I was fighting, rather than having to switch them out for another. A new feature that helped me out immensely in my playthrough was after you first encounter a Pokemon, the next time you fight it, your moves on the bottom screen will show their effectiveness against that creature. I ended up being almost too reliant on that feature, which looking back makes me baffled on how I beat previous games before this one. I'm not entirely unfamiliar with the type matchups, but a lot of the new and more complex types definitely trip me up. This helped me out more than it should have. And it's not like it makes the game easier per se, but for someone who doesn't have every matchup memorized, it really influenced my overall enjoyment of the game. Gone away with the HMs, with a replacement being Poké. No longer are you forced to teach these moves to your Pokemon, resulting in you to have to carry around an HM slave. Instead, you can call up your Poké and summon Pokemon to perform tasks that HMs used to. Surf, fly, rock smash, heck, the bike is practically replaced with a Tauros. I love this new change not only for the riddance of HMs, but for the fact that you can ride and interact with these Pokemon. HMs were always an attempt to kind of show your Pokemon's usefulness outside of battle, but Poké feels so much more organic, and the HMs have never been so fun to use. Pokemon Fresh was a really cute addition to help you bond more with your Pokemon. During the first few hours of the game, I loved spending time just petting my creatures, but after a while, I guess it kind of got a little dull. But that didn't stop me from using it the entire game because of the new feature that lets you cure status effects on your Pokemon. If your Pokemon falls asleep or gets paralyzed during battle, you don't have to waste an item or run over to the Pokemon Center to get healed up. This doesn't negate the use for those items in battle, since you can only do it afterwards, but there's a convenient little button that lets you jump right to this mode upon exiting a battle. Sometimes your Pokemon will get dirty, whether it be a little dirt from a mud slap attack, or if they're drenched from a water gun. It's not necessary to clean your Pokemon after every battle, but I found it a lot of fun to just blow dry them. Popplio is a fun place for your PC Pokemon to run around and participate in some time-based events. Each island you can upgrade and serves a different purpose. One generates beans that serve as Popplio currency for upgrades, and you can also feed them to your Pokemon to increase happiness. Another lets you plant berries to grow more, which is really convenient so you don't have to go track down the berry farm on some random route. There's even one that can level up and train your Pokemon like previous daycares have done before. In all honesty, you could probably just completely ignore this mode and beat the game just fine. It's just a convenient way to get some extra items and increase your Pokemon's stats and happiness. The visuals in this game are something I really can't undersell. The vast changes in elevation to the environment give the impression that this is a real place. Now with the full 360 character controls, it only adds to that effect. No longer are you tied to the 4 directions of a conventional D-pad. This beautiful atmosphere is accompanied by some amazing music. There are many town tunes I constantly find myself humming. A small detail that really resonated with me was on how on routes you could hear the faint cries of Pokemon in the background. This really made the areas feel ever more alive than any other Pokemon game has before, especially how most places were not only filled with people, but Pokemon too. I always felt the older games made Pokemon themselves feel a bit disconnected from the rest of the world, since you were restricted to seeing them either in battle or just your PC. There'd be a few Pokemon here and there on the overworld, but other than that, none of them compared to Sun and Moon. Nearly every building you go into, there's at least one Pokemon just lounging about. Even during battles, the backgrounds have significantly improved to better reflect where you're fighting. They even have you and the trainer you're fighting against on screen, which I felt really added to the battle experience. However, when it came to double battles, the game took a bit of a hit and does chug. With so many models on screen, I can only assume that it must be hard for the 3DS to handle. I played on the original 3DS XL, so the experience may differ on a new 3DS. It isn't a huge detriment since double battles are rare, as they usually are, but since it's a turn-based game, you don't really have to worry about frame drops messing you up. It's tolerable, and it doesn't really take away from the overall game experience. This game's emphasis on human and Pokemon interactions was the key point of the game's story as well. Without going into spoilers, I fell absolutely in love with many of the characters such as Hau, Team Skull, and of course, Lily. These great characters were accompanied by some truly amazing Pokemon designs. Of course, a lot were shown off in the trailers before the game's release, but I still had a bunch of "what is that?" reactions to some of my encounters, and I really enjoyed the Alola forms by putting its twist on the older Pokemon. Because there were so many great Pokemon in this game, I found it really hard to just narrow it down to the 6 Pokemon I was supposed to use. I would be alternating them out frequently throughout my playthrough. Traditionally, when I played mainline Pokemon games, I would only catch a few that I want to have on my team, then maybe a few others just because I recognize them. I never had really the urge to catch them all, as they say. But after this game, I felt it. I got that addictive feeling that I'd never really understood before. That's the thing about this game. It hit me on a personal level that no mainline Pokemon has ever done before. Often in story cutscenes, they'll take the name of your first Pokemon in your party and insert it into dialogue. They'll be like, "You and Rowlet did a great job in that trial." It was always great to see my Pokemon getting the recognition for our achievements together. Another great detail is the little animation at the end of finishing a trial, where your Pokemon turns around the camera and does like a little dance. Then when you meet your starter for the first time and your character picks it up and embraces it, it invokes such a great feeling compassion your trainer has for its new Pokemon. This game's focus on relationships with your Pokemon is something I've always wanted to have. In the end, I truly felt like I've grown alongside my Pokemon in such an unforgettable journey. I am obsessed with Pokemon Sun and Moon. It offered a fresh new experience with the Island Challenge that I found tons of fun all the way through. The addition of Moved Effectiveness Assist tool proved to be extremely helpful for me and will be hugely beneficial for those who are unfamiliar with Pokemon. And the addition of the Poké Ride system was great. I never want to go back to using HMs, let alone riding a normal bike. Tauros is much cooler. The game's tone was sold to me through its atmosphere and amazing music. Its lovable characters and great Pokemon designs only added to that experience. Occasionally, SOS battles can be a bit ridiculous, but it hardly happens frequently enough to be a huge problem. During my playtime, it probably happened like twice. Then when it comes to double battles, yes, the game does chug a little bit, but it's still playable nonetheless. I am truly shocked about how much I love this game. I have never been so immersed in a portable game before. Like I mentioned earlier, at the end of it all, I truly felt like I have finished a real journey and grown myself alongside the characters I met and the Pokemon I traveled with. It's amazing to be able to look back at some of the early game memories and reflect on how much I've changed since then. I might even go as far as saying this might be my new favorite Pokemon game of all time, even surpassing some of the Mystery Dungeon titles. And that's really saying something because those are some of my favorite games of all time. I highly recommend you picking up this game if you have the chance. You made me surprised just as much as I was as how great this game truly is. Be sure to give the video a big awesome like and subscribe for more on Pokemon, video game reviews, and other Nintendo related content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!